Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast, where we focus on how authors found success, looking at strategies that have taken them to the top of the bestseller charts, as well as what they've learned from their mistakes. Because being an indie author is more than knowing the latest marketing trend. It's about being innovative and creative and learning from your mistakes.
Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. I'm Sara Rosette.
And I'm Jami Albright. And this week on the show we have
Sally Farrant.
Yes, we do. And it is so good, y'all. It's different than some of the shows we've done, and you're going to really love it.
Yeah, it's really good. We talk about pricing. Sally is a pricing expert. She helps people set their prices. And so we discussed all our pricing questions with her about like how you research pricing and is there should your pricing be related to length of your book? And just all kinds of.
And mindset around pricing, and I think she talks about this, but women have a harder time asking for what they're worth than men do sometimes. And so, just really great information. And I think you're really going to love it. So what's been going on with you, Sara?
Well, I have been out of town this week. We just got back in. Last week I was gone. We went to the mountains and we did hiking and it was beautiful and just loved it. Loved getting out of town for a while and actually loved being off social media. That was something I really enjoyed.
Yes.
So now I'm trying to get back in the groove with writing and, just kind of readjusting to a routine. So,
right.
Right. What about you? What have you been doing?
Just getting ready for this launch. I have a reader that is just fantastic with catching all the typos that everyone else has missed. And so I was waiting for her to get back to me. So before I put up the paperback, I like to put the paperback up early, to get reviews coming in on it, even though I'm not doing a giveaway, which we talked about. But so she got back to me last week and I put the paperback up and I ordered paperbacks. Fingers crossed they're going to get to me by the 25th because I have a signing that day. But if not, it's okay. If it's not, it's fine. But then I ended up putting the pre-order up, not before last, I guess. Yeah, not before last. And so I'm ready to roll. I'm just waiting for just a few things to come in so I can move forward. But mostly I'm just, promoting the heck out of the pre-order or getting people excited. I'm not looking for a ton of pre-orders, but I wanted the link. I'm not brave enough to put it up like a cold release without the links, even though my pre-order went live in less than an hour. It's so crazy.
The pre-orders seem to go faster for some reason.
It's so crazy. So I don't really know.
Yeah. We just talked about that with I didn't do a pre-order with the journal and I missed it. I was like, I want that link because it's just so much easier to do.
It's just so much easier. Yeah. And, the reviews are coming in and they're great. It's kind of blowing me away and so grateful for my readers. And so we'll see. Yeah, I'll keep y'all posted. I'm going to start today and I'm going to send an email every day to my list until Friday. And I'm going to give them a chapter a day to the book. So we'll see how that goes. I warned them that they may get more emails from me than normal. And, if they don't want to open them and read them, they don't have to. And I'm going to be okay with that. It's not going to hurt my feelings. But I thought I would try it and see what happens. And I think that's interesting. Yeah. Because I've done that before, but only a email separated by a week usually leading up to it. So I think I'm going to do it every day. Yeah, to see every day. Because that way people hopefully will get really hooked in. Yeah. And by the time it releases, they'll be ready to see what happens. Yeah, I have no idea if this will work. It may be a horrible idea. It may be, it could be a horrible idea.
It could be really good.
Because on Friday, they could be going, well, I'm so sick of this and her, and I'm not opening this email. But hopefully they won't.
I doubt that.
So I'll take the hit for you guys if it's bad and let you know. If it's a good idea, then you can certainly steal it. It's fine with me.
Yeah.
But so that's all that's been going on.
Sounds good. So I'm excited for your release.
Thanks.
And we should do a question of the week about pricing.
Yes, we should.
So, what do you think about, like, we could either do how do you set your prices, or maybe mindset blocks. Do you have any mindset blocks around pricing? Because we talked about that a little bit, about how sometimes that holds us back.
Well, we could do, how do you set your pricing? And do you, I sort of have three. How do you set your pricing? Do you experiment with pricing? And do you have mindset blocks around pricing?
Yeah.
How about that? Good. We'll do questions.
Yeah. So you can answer one, all, or none.
Yes, exactly.
In the Facebook group.
I'm all about giving choices. That's what's going on. But we should get on with the interview because it's great.
Yes, it is. All right. So here's Sally. All right. Today, we're really excited to have Sally Farrant with us. Hi, Sally. How are you?
I'm fine. Thanks. You?
We're great. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about pricing today and just all things pricing. And it's a big topic of debate in the author community. So we're really interested to talk with you and see what you have to say. So let me read your bio real quick and we'll jump right in. Sally is a pricing expert. Coming from 25 years of accounting and business, she now helps small businesses get to grips with their numbers and pricing. She's the host of the Pricing Queen podcast, and she's on a mission to get you to understand your numbers and how to have a successful business on your terms. Which sounds terrific.
Yeah, exactly. I've got my pen and paper ready. Exactly. And just FYI, it's not a different type of podcast today since my voice is so low. It's 2:00 your time, Sally, at 8:00 our time. So I've only had 2 cups of coffee this morning. So
not enough.
No, well, not even 2, 1.5. So hopefully we'll stay on track. So tell us a bit more about yourself and how you help businesses with pricing.
Yeah, so I have had corporate jobs for about 25 years. So I had corporate jobs. I've worked for people like Channel 4 and Guinness World Records and people like that. And I've always done the internal accounts for them. And then I came out and decided that it was not flexible and didn't fit around my small children. I've got 2 boys who are now 9 and 7, but this was 4 years ago. And it just wasn't very flexible around small children. I was being asked to work more and more and more. And in the end, I just said, it's enough. And went out on my own. And so I do accounts internally for businesses. But actually, the biggest thing that small business owners ask, particularly solopreneurs and kind of individuals running their own business, is pricing. So it's the biggest question I got every time. It's like, how do I put my prices up? How do I deal with it? And I mostly deal with women because actually women and pricing is a massive block. You know, we're always taught that we should be here to help and we should be, and we should be doing things for free. And suddenly it's like, actually, no, we need to earn some money. And also I think a lot of women start their business as a bit of a hobby. So they kind of think, oh, well, I'm doing it from the kitchen table, or I'll start a book, or, whatever it is. They think, oh, I'll just, it's nobody takes it very seriously for a bit. And then suddenly it's a business. It's like, I've actually got to charge something decent for it and all of that sort of stuff. And it gets much more complicated.
Right. Yeah, that is very true. We all have a lot of mind blocks or mental blocks around pricing, I think. Yeah. But I think women especially can have a lot. So we have a lot of baggage sometimes.
Yes, definitely. Massively. Women underprice way more than men ever do.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any aspirations to write yourself?
Well, I would love to, but I don't think I'm a very good writer. I also think that it would be the most boring book in the world if I wrote about something. I'd kind of like to write a book about like pricing and all that sort of stuff by myself. And I definitely couldn't write fiction. I mean, I'm an absolute avid reader. I read all the time. I think my Kindle said I'm on a streak of like 500 and something days the other day.
Yeah. Wow.
So I read every day, but I'm not. I look at books and go, "This is great," but I don't think I could write one.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, who knows? Maybe someday.
Yeah,
maybe someday. Yes, but I do love reading books, so that's always good.
Yeah.
What do you wish your clients knew about your field?
Well, I think a lot of people do now come to me for pricing and stuff. And it's like, actually, it's kind of part of a bigger numbers picture. Again, I think women are often much more, and again, I do work with men, but generally women are much more afraid of numbers.
Right.
Small business owners often terrified of, so I kind of do kind of all aspects of numbers, and kind of, because a lot of accountants talk in terrible jargon. So I am an accountant, but they talk in so much jargon, and people come away and go, I didn't really understand what they said, but they don't want to say, I didn't really understand what they said.
Yeah.
So part of that is trying to break that barrier a bit and kind of go, I am a normal human being and I'm not a really dull accountant. Because there's a lot of them about, let's face it. But also that you need to keep an eye on your numbers all the time. It's not something to do once a year when you see your accountant.
Right.
You need to know what's going on, because it's the only way really to make decisions in your business.
Right.
And if you're not making enough money, then it's just a very expensive hobby.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I'm glad to hear you say that, because a lot of times I think we get it, authors in particular get advice to don't obsess over your numbers, don't watch them every day. And I do. I mean, like I watch mine every day. And when I don't, because I've gone for periods where I didn't, because, I'm trying to be like other people say I should be. It makes it, first of all, it gives me anxiety. And second of all, I find that if something dips or goes sideways, it's really hard to catch that and then get it back to where it's supposed to be. Do you find that's part of the problem too?
Yeah, I think so. I think that by not knowing, you sort of assume that you're doing okay. So I definitely have found at times where I kind of think, well, I'm doing quite well, but I'm also spending quite a lot on, say, Facebook ads, or like when my podcast is on, it's reasonably expensive to get that produced. So it's kind of going, so you're suddenly like, well, actually I'm spending almost as much as I'm taking in, which means I'm not earning very much. And you go through phases where that number, and it can do that. It can be very much in and out.
Yeah.
But you have to be careful that it's going to come back out again, because actually the risk is that you're suddenly like, and most of the time what happens is that you don't pay yourself enough.
Yes.
Right. So what happens is you think, oh yeah, it's going fine. Then you realize you haven't paid yourself for 3 months. You're like, hang on a minute. I need to, and it's kind of stopping the slide. I think when you suddenly realize you're not, you think you've had a really good month, been really busy. And then you're looking at your income at the end of the month going, well, I haven't earned half what I thought. The amount of work I've done means that I should have earned more.
Right.
Yeah. So I think, keeping your eye on it. Why do they say you shouldn't do that as an author? Because it's kind of a vanity thing.
Maybe, and because it can cause you to obsess over numbers and stuff, which I get that, but I'm not really a numbers person. So for me, when I get behind, it's really hard for me to catch up, because I'm like, do I carry the one? I don't know what to do.
But Jamie's like really good at ads. She says she's not good at numbers, but she's excellent at monitoring Facebook ads and figuring out tweaking. And so she's self-deprecating.
Yeah, we do have our own skills. I'm constantly calling my husband, come look at this. But that's, for me, it's important to keep an eye on it. But I generally keep my mouth shut about that, because a lot of, like, I heard one person say, really successful person say, I said something about rank and the amount of money I'm spending and stuff. And they said, well, just don't check your rank. Like, I just never look at my rank. And I'm like, but my rank tells me, it's an indication of how I'm doing, and anyway, but I just feel like, for me, I have to stay on top of it. So.
And I think it's a bit like, understanding whether Facebook ads are worth it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, if your rank is linked to your Facebook ads, then absolutely you're kind of like, actually, I need to know whether it's making a difference or not, because it's not making a difference. And I think that's true of lots of the statistics. There's so many numbers in a small business that you kind of need to keep an eye on. And me in marketing, it's something I've had to really learn, because in a big business, I just did the numbers, and now I'm like, oh, it's all about me. Oh,
yes,
no.
Exactly.
There's all of that stuff. I'm just like, oh, God. I promote myself, and and it's a personal brand, and I think that makes it does make a difference. But you need to know what metrics in your business you need to recover. It's like knowing how many people are on your list, or how many people you can sell to, and all of those sorts of things in terms of your email. And but Facebook ads, particularly when you're investing, can be quite large amounts of money. You need to know whether it's worth it, and it can be quite difficult to see that, I think, sometimes.
Exactly.
Well, on your podcast, The Pricing Queen, which is excellent, You list some pricing myths in one of your episodes. So can we go through a couple of those and, like kind of talk through some of them? So, and how they might apply to authors. Price, the first one you had out was pricing is a one and done thing. That's a myth. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a myth. So I think that you can change the price as often as you want.
Yes.
And for all of us, it's always evolving. You start out, like, generally you hope that prices generally go up, but also if you've overpriced something, you can always bring it down. I know that's true a lot in and I don't know enough about how the world of authors work. I know enough as a buyer. Yes. Amazon are constantly discounting and going, look, you can have it for 99p today.
Yeah.
So there's less control, I guess. But it's kind of going, actually, there isn't, you don't have to fix. If you fix on a price today, you can change it as often as you kind of see fit.
Right.
You won't be changing it every day. But I always say you put your price up after 5 clients and that sort of thing. And definitely as you become a better known expert, author in this case, you can charge more for things. And I guess for books it's a bit more tricky because there tends to be a bit more of a standard for books. I don't know whether there's a premium you can charge on books really, or whether it's just hardback, paperback kind of.
I think it is. And I think honestly for indie authors, we do have control of our pricing, which is awesome. Laura Lynn Page, she's an author. She spoke at a conference I was at, and she said that you can find different readers at different price points, which I think is true for, especially ebooks, because it is a bit of a sliding scale. And I've sold mine for as little as $2.99 and as much as $5.99. And $4.99 seems to be a really good price point for me. But,
and I guess what you get is a lot of loyal fans. So actually, interesting. I've just written my today's daily email that I write, and I wrote because I've been listening to something from a lady called Susie Ashworth, and she said there's a price for everyone.
Yes.
So there is a price where somebody will buy it at.
Yes.
And if people aren't buying, you haven't found the people who want that price.
Right. Because because there's some people who price equates quality. And so if it's set too low, then they assume that it's a kind of not worth it. It's a bargain price. It's a bargain service or whatever. And so a higher price brings those people in, which is so interesting. Yeah. I hadn't really
I think that. And I think that's right. And I think that's a bit about kind of the pricing low when you're new thing, which is that you price low because you think, well, I'm new, I haven't done it before.
Right.
But actually people then think, well, it's harder to put your price up, but it's also people go, well, you don't know what you're doing then. Right. There is definitely like exactly what you just said. There's a point below which people go, well, that must, if I can get it for 99 cents, then it's just it's rubbish. It's a rubbish book.
Right.
Yeah. They're just trying to give it away.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to the mindsets we have, because a lot of us, we think, well, I'm new, or it's my first book and I don't have any fans, so I have to price it at 99 cents to get people to give it a try, which people will give it a try at 99 cents more easily, I think, than a higher price. Right. But it's an interesting, I don't think that there's as many people agree with the idea that you can find readers at higher price points in the author world. They're like, well, a lot of people think it needs to be low to draw people in. But there is a market of people out there. There's a group of people who will pay more and they will associate more value with it.
Yeah. And I think that's right. And I think that, sometimes you do need to, if you're trying to get into the market, you almost certainly do start at a lower price than you would if you've got 5 years, 10 years, 20 books, whatever it is. Right. But I don't think that you should always be pricing really, really low just because you are new to something. Right. And I think often people leave other jobs, which means they have experience and stuff that is relevant to. Right. Now, sometimes if they go off and write about something totally different, but, sometimes it is totally relevant what they've been doing before. If they were writing before, that actually means that you don't need to charge the lowest price. You might charge a mid price rather than a really premium price, but you don't need to charge rock bottom prices right at the beginning.
Yeah. Right. When I launched my first book, I launched it at $2.99, which was at the time high because a lot of books were being launched at 99 cents. But there was just something in my gut that said I cannot give this book away for 99 cents. And it did great. And then I raised my price to $3.99 after, I don't know, couple of weeks or whatever. And it stayed that for about 6 or 8 months. And a friend of mine was we were at a retreat, and she was looking at my book, and she was like, and the reviews and everything. She said, Jami, you need to raise your price to $4.99. $4.99. And I was like, no. And she said, yeah, you do. And so I did. And it was like,
and the world
oh my gosh, it gripped my heart. I just couldn't hardly breathe. But what turned out, I didn't see a drop in anything. In fact, I saw an increase in income. And thank you, Amy Teagan. Shout out to you, because had she not said that, I don't know that I ever would have raised my price, because I thought, well, I'm new, I only have 2 books and, all of this stuff. But it was really not a big deal at all to raise it that $1. It did not affect sales at all.
Yeah. So. And I think it is kind of going, actually, how price sensitive are people about that sort of thing? And I think there is a point, people are probably not going to pay $10 for a book they've never heard of. No. But I think people do buy. So for me, I've got a Kindle, so I'm much more inclined to buy books in a way that I might not have bought books when I bought books. So I don't buy paper books anymore. Yeah, which is a bit sad, but it's much more convenient. Yes. But I've got loads of books on my Kindle all the time. So, and actually, I'm always looking for new authors and new things to read and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm much more inclined to just, £5, $5. It doesn't seem that much to have that sort of thing.
Right.
I think sometimes we overthink it a little bit too much, because our price points in the big scope of things are pretty low. So maybe because it's a
volume business, isn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of the time.
Yeah.
And in the end, if you price it at $7 and it's too much, there's nothing to stop you moving it down.
No,
if nobody buys it at $7, you just go, well, okay, I'll make it $5.
Right.
And keep moving it down but once you start at very low, it's almost harder to come up than it is to go down. Absolutely. Even though I think psychologically we feel it's harder to go down, because you're like, well, I clearly haven't sold enough, so I've got to go down. But I don't think people think. Often people haven't even seen it at a previous price or whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah. We worry about things too much, because I've heard authors say, but if I put it down, the people who bought it at this other price are going to be upset. And I was like, they're probably not even going to notice.
They're probably not going to know,
reading some other book.
They've read that book now, and they don't.
They've moved on. Yeah.
and like I say, books go up and down. You get offers and all the time, and you can run it as a special offer. Look, there's an offer. It's for a couple of weeks or whatever.
Yeah. Well, so we've hit a couple of the myths. The pricing is a one and done thing, and that pricing should be low when you're new. And then I think the other one was you can't double your prices overnight. Is that right? Is that the other myth?
So I don't see any reason why you can't do that. I just think that there is particularly if you've got very low prices. So if you double your prices and lose half your clients, that's fine. You're still in the same position you were before, and you've got space to get more clients. So there's that kind of thing of, oh my God, if I double my prices, I'll lose half my clients. It's like, well, that's kind of fine, because there's space. So, and I think that you kind of think, well, I'll lose clients, and some clients you won't lose. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of fear around losing people in general, I think. But I think that, like you say, you double it. What's the worst that could happen? People say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't afford that. And you think about how you manage that with the client.
Yeah.
Or you double it. And then if they're upset, you say, well, keep an eye out. There will be a sale, soon in the future. And you can.
Or check your library.
Yes. That's another good one too.
Yeah. And I think that, again, it's kind of going, well, look, there are times, again, it's keeping an eye on how well things sell. If you put your prices up a lot, like we just said, if you put them up a lot and nobody buys, well, you kind of go, well, I've reached the price. And then you just want to bring it down gradually until you reach the tipping point where actually enough people buy that it's worth it to be more than, so you might say, well, actually it's not double, but it's $4 or $5 more than it was. Right. So it's kind of going, actually, where is the point at which people stop buying? And that's why you say about keeping your eye on your stats. Actually, it's like, if you are moving your pricing around, keep a really good eye on how many people buy at different price points. And I know there are other factors as well. around, launches and, all of that sort of stuff and special promotions. But if you're generally offering books at a price, then kind of see how, and give it enough time to bed in, so that you're not flitting around with the pricing a lot, because people just don't know. But I don't know how sensitive. I don't feel like a book at that, like you say, because books are not desperately expensive. They're not, it's not a great investment of money to kind of go, well, I'll buy a $5 book.
Yeah.
Or $10 book or whatever it is. And I think business books often you can charge more.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Fiction,
Non-fiction.
definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on that note, ebooks have a lower price point, and many fiction authors don't have a big ticket item other than their audiobooks, if they have audiobooks, or ebook bundles like box sets. Do you have any suggestions for authors who'd like to create a product or a higher price point?
So I often think for authors, it would be about things like teaching other people how to write a book, so I think in authors is kind of, if you're writing a book, it's kind of a reasonably fixed price, but there is an upper limit. I think you can't get away from that, and I think it is reasonably price pressured as an industry. But I think that where you could do more is to kind of do workshops or do kind of memberships. Like for someone like me who I'm like, I couldn't write a book. But actually I kind of think, well, I've got a great idea, but I just don't know how to get started. I don't, but but it's kind of like, actually I do think that teaching other people to write, how they could write books, or even having a kind of membership where you say, right, well, we'll write a book in this length of time. I think that's where and I think you can do all of that online, or even have a course where you do that online. And I think that's where you could kind of say, well, actually that's some of the opportunity to do more high ticket stuff. I think bundles work well, but again, that's usually slightly at a discount,
right?
You're often offering a bundle for a little bit less than for a little bit less than some of the whole kind of thing. The parts are worth more.
Make it a deal,
So it's generally a bit of a deal, even if it's not a massive deal. So I think it's those sorts of things that you kind of, if you want to kind of do that sort of thing. And I think these days, online courses and stuff like that, you can do all of that from home. You don't even have to do it live, but you can also kind of help people through the process of writing a book and kind of getting their idea out there, how to self-publish, how to, it's like, well, if I'm starting out writing a book, what would I want to know?
Right. Well, what would you say to somebody like I want to focus the most of my time on my fiction, and I have a couple of courses set up, but they're more, I guess they'd be like self-paced, like here's the material,
passive income kind of thing.
Yeah. But what if somebody like just wants, what's the difference between that and like consulting with someone, like doing like a one-time, like I'll take
like
somebody.
I do.
Jami does some of that. So can you talk?
So I definitely think, so definitely one-to-one consultancy is much, much higher price point. So your one-to-one consultancy starts at a decent price. Mine starts at kind of £500 a day plus. But if you've got a course, one of the great advantages of that, it's never totally passive. So passive income is always a bit of but it is scalable. So you can sell it. If you do it once, you can either run it live or you run it as a course, with all the material, you can sell it 100 times over. And you don't have to do any more for that other than market it out and that sort of thing. And don't get me wrong, sometimes that's a lot of work. But once you've created the material, you don't have to then recreate it every time. Whereas obviously one-to-one, it's different for every person that you're dealing with. But it's much higher price. And I often say to people, the best thing to do is to do the one-to-one thing first and work out your process. So if you've got, tell me a bit about what you do consultancy wise, Jami.
What I will do is I'll do like an hour-long Zoom call where we look at, depending on what they need, but I look at their Amazon page. We evaluate their covers, if they're not selling, why are they selling? We'll also come up with strategies for selling books in a series, like is your back matter the way it needs to be? Are you pulling people through a series? And then some ads consultation, just depending on, what they need, because, well, I'm good at ads. I'm not an expert at ads. And so I feel like, that, but And then if they need a follow-up call, I give them a follow-up call for free. But I have a very hard time.
You didn't see my face there, did you? I just made a very like raised eyebrow face.
Yeah, she did. But here's the deal. I have trouble with getting clients sometimes or a lot of times, because the things I offer are for people who aren't really making money, and I'm saying, how can I make more money? And so, and I mean, I'll just tell you, I charge $300 for that call, and then you get a free follow-up call. And so for me, that sounds reasonable. I would have paid that, but there are a lot of people who won't pay that. So I was getting a lot more business when my prices were lower, but I just found that there were a lot of people that would do it. I would spend this time, do all the work, and then they wouldn't do what I suggested.
Wouldn't take the suggestion.
So actually what you want with this sort of thing is to say, right, is to go back to previous clients and say, how much money have you made? Now we made those changes.
Yes.
And what you want to see is that people have made back more than
what they
$300.
paid. Yes.
And that's when you can kind of go, this was worth it. Look, most of my clients, if you do the work, I can make you $300 back, and here is the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of talking about that, where you can kind of go, you can't always prove that what you told them is going to make more money, but if they're not making any sales, you presumably can move most people to making $300 worth of sales.
If they choose to do it. Yeah.
That's it. And I'm sure you've got clients where that has definitely happened. They've made more than that. So that's the kind of focus of your marketing, is kind of going, look, this seems like a lot of money. And I think sometimes it's calling it out.
Yes.
And there seems like a lot of money, but look, if you do the work, and pretty much, I mean, you can't quite guarantee, but here is the, here are all the people. Yeah. Here's the potential. And I will make, if you do the work, the $300 will come back several times over, or whatever whatever you can say.
Right.
And I think it is kind of moving. Sometimes, yes, people don't have loads of money, but actually they're also like, I've written a book, spent a lot of time writing a book, and I'm now not, because presumably one of the problems with self-publishing is there's no upfront, there's no
investment.
Well, there's no, but there's also nobody's buying your book off you. So there's no cash. So you're presumably often not making any money until you actually make sales.
Correct.
So I think sometimes it's talking about that as being an investment in your business and how to make, if people are don't know how to make, it's a really difficult thing on how to make sales and stuff like that.
It is. And I've made sales from the beginning. So it's not like I'm not talking about things I don't know about. I mean, I put in the work on the front end. So from the beginning, I was making sales. And so I do think that, I'm confident in what I do, but I also like to help people. And I do understand being, broke.
I know. And I think this is what we come back to, what we said at the beginning, which is kind of like, actually, we want to help. The other thing you can do, though, is that you could produce a mini course or an hour's masterclass, which for those people who say, I can't afford that, you say, well, here's my generic one. Right. And you go through your process of what they could do. And then if they come back and say, actually, here's my $50 thing, I've, go away and have a go at some of those things. And they could, if they understood it enough, they could get a result from doing that.
Well, that's very,
if you want one-to-one, you're going to have to pay for it. And you might find that plenty of people buy the $50 thing and never come back for any more.
Right.
And other people will go, oh, this is too hard. I can't, I need some help. Actually, they kind of go, so you could say, well, people that say I can't afford it, be careful of your, be careful of I can't afford it is I don't really want to do it. I can't really.
Right. Well, and that was another reason I decided to raise my price, because it is for me, it's frustrating because I do put a lot, if they say, this is what I need, I look at all their stuff, I read all their blurbs, and I put a lot of emotional and mental effort into it. And then when they say, well, I don't want to change my covers. My current readers love my covers. And I'm like, but your covers aren't selling this book to any new readers. So you need to change this cover. Or my suggestion would be to change this cover, or at least give it a try. That's frustrating.
And then when they don't do it, it's frustrating.
It's frustrating.
And then you don't get the result. And then you don't get the results. And it's,
They ruin my average.
And it's definitely when I talk to people about pricing, and a lot of the stuff is about confidence.
Yes,
so actually a lot of pricing is about, you've just got to kind of put on your big girl pants and kind of go,
yes.
Oh, and then you tell them the price, and then you go, right, I'm not going to say anything for at least 30 seconds and wait to see what they say.
Yeah.
But actually a lot of it is about that. And actually, if they don't have the confidence to then go off and, you know, they won't have that conversation, you're like, you're going to have to put your price up with that client. That is a ridiculous price. You cannot possibly.
Right.
They don't do it. And you're like, well, I can't do it for you.
Yes.
But then they haven't done it. And it's a shame, because you're like, well, that's actually, that one conversation is probably the main thing you need to do.
Right. And
like you say, changing the covers, you know, that sort of thing. Actually, something quite small.
Yeah.
Is a really massive hurdle. So I think it's kind of, So I think thinking about whether you could have a cheaper thing that if people don't want to work with you one-to-one or can't afford to, I definitely think it's worth having, and particularly if you feel, and I'm like you, often people that come to me about pricing don't have very much money because they're undercharging, you know, you've got the same problem. So if you're coming about pricing, you often do have that problem. So I think it's having something you can kind of go, well, look, until you're ready to work with me one-to-one, here is my, you know, I have a couple of £100 for a power hour, which works quite well. But actually, here's my £27 masterclass or whatever, where you can teach people to do it. But it's making sure they can still get some result out of it if they do what you say in the class. So for me, I've got a packages masterclass, and by the end of it, you could create your packages. They're not bespoke to you. The class is not bespoke to you individually, but you are able to do that as part of the class. So it's making sure that whatever you're selling, they can get, they don't have to come back to you to work one-to-one with you. They didn't want to. Because I think you can feel a bit shortchanged otherwise, because people go, well, actually, now I've done this, but actually I can't do it myself. So you do have things at the end. And something about how capable you are and all that sort of thing as well.
That's great.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. Well, so coming back to just like the different price points, because this is something that comes up in the author community a lot, is that authors should price their books according to length. So like a short story is 99 cents, a novella is $2.99, a novel $3.99 or $4.99 or a little bit higher. So what are your thoughts on using length to set prices? I kind of think I know what you're going to say.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because I do think that definitely as a consumer, I'm like, if it's a really short story, I'm like, well, I don't want to pay loads for it. And I think sometimes those sorts of things can be a good introduction to authors. I think in general, length is not, I think probably the type of story it is. So if it's billed as a short story, that probably is cheaper, and probably as a novella, the same thing. Whereas a full length, but I think a full length novel could be anything 300 pages up. You know, my Kindle sometimes I'm like, oh, it says like 49 minutes. I'm like, well, I've paid like $5 for that. That's a lot.
And it's your expectations, right? Because it's like if you're expecting something full length, or you think you're buying something that's full length, and then it's not, then you're disappointed. And that's what we don't want.
Yeah. So I think there's definitely a difference between full length, what you would consider a full length novel, versus a shorter length novel. But I think that once you get into whatever the minimum is considered to be for a full length novel kind of thing, then actually after that, it's not about the number of pages, and you want to avoid it being about the number of pages. So if you bill it as a short story or as a novella, then I would expect it to be priced cheaper. And if it's a full length, but other than that, I wouldn't expect there to be masses of price difference between them. Just because it's like 800 pages versus 400 or whatever that's not a deciding factor, I don't think, after that. But presumably there's quite a lot of pressure to do that as well. Longer books create more money.
Right. They do. Yeah. But I think too, if you think about it, like within my catalog, and if my price points make sense for my books versus like, oh, well, everybody else is pricing, $3.99 for a novel. So therefore my novels have to be $3.99. So that means my short stories have to be $9.99. So if it makes sense for your readers and they can look at your books and go, okay, her price points are this, they make sense, then I think that's probably a better way to do it.
I think that's it. I think it's thinking about the customer, in this case, the buyer's journey, through your stuff. They might say, well, actually, I'll pay a small amount to buy something small from you to see if I want to work with you. So for me, that's kind of a masterclass or something like that. For you guys, it might be a short story or a novella. And they're like, well, I'll start with something smaller when it's on offer. And then they'll be like, right, well, okay, the next thing I'll come through. You kind of want to think about how people get to your kind of
Right.
My most expensive book. Just my new book or whatever it is. You want to push people, you want to kind of go, where am I trying to get people to get to at the end of the journey with me? Where's the ideal place? And I think it's trying to see whether actually that does come that way. And like you say, but also it's pitching your prices that you're going, actually, if I'm at $3.99, I'm going to have to sell my short stories at 99 cents. Whereas actually, if my full price book is $7 or $8.99, actually, I could sell my short stories at a different point. And it's also thinking about how often you find you have to discount. Because actually, if you end up feeling you've got to discount a lot, then actually starting with a cheap price doesn't help you, because you've got to then constantly, you've got to discount somewhere.
Yeah. And if you start at like $4 or $5.99, it's easier to discount. You have more, you can give a bigger discount. Whereas if you start at $2.99,
there's nowhere to go.
Yeah. There's nowhere.
It's not worth it for you. I mean, in the end, you've got to go. And some of it's also going, how many have I got to sell of something to make my money back? And I know that's a bit more tricky when you're writing books, because there's a huge investment of time up front.
Right.
Which I don't know whether you ever totally get back unless
Well, I think over the life of your book, though, because books are unique, because you can,
well, that's true too.
Like you can write the book and then you can earn your royalties
it's properly passive once you once you get it going. It's one of the only really good passive,
especially if you're indie, because then you can make so much more money on each copy that you can really you can earn your money back sometimes pretty quickly, depending on if it, the first book, it's always going to take longer to write the first book and get it going. So
but I think it is thinking about, like, if I sell things at 99 cents, how many would I have to sell? And how many, if I sold them at $3.99, whoa, suddenly, and actually the kind of the realistic bit of I do this with a lot of clients. It's like, well, how many of those of you, if you're going to sell things at 27 quid or at $3.99, how many would I actually sell to make that worthwhile? And actually, if you start with a slightly higher price, the effort's less to get that far. And yes, less people buy, but you don't have to sell as many.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So what's your advice on price research on comp authors or genres in general? And should we make sure our prices are in line with other authors in our genre?
So I always think that actually competition is overrated, because you are totally unique. And I think in this situation, you really are.
Yes.
So, I think you might say, well, I'm kind of a pricing expert, but there are other pricing experts. I'm not, you are buying me, but you're not, it's not that unique. Whereas I think when you're writing books, it really is very unique. I think it's worth keeping an eye always on that you're not wildly out of the pricing in your genre. But I also think that, so I think if you're double the nearest price, then probably that's not going to work. But if you've got a really loyal fan base who are prepared to buy it at that rate, then frankly, it doesn't matter what everybody else is doing.
Right.
And again, I think it's looking at the difference between, if you're self-publishing versus not self-publishing, it's kind of, there's a different price. You're deciding the price. So I would say that keep an eye on the competition, that you're not wildly out. And I say this to most of my clients, that you're not ridiculous. And if you are loads more expensive, make sure you're very clear in your marketing why that is.
Right.
So if you're twice the price of someone else, why are you twice the price of someone else? You've written 25 books. You've written 25 books instead of 2.
Right. Yeah.
So it makes that also makes quite a difference. And I think it's kind of being really, I think if your pricing is quite off, if you sort of mean, actually being really clear in some of your marketing, look, actually this is more expensive because of X and Y. And I think it's kind of calling some of that out as well, because otherwise people go, well, that's far too expensive, and they've gone before you've kind of
where you've had time to explain it.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't even give you a chance. Yeah.
Well, so we've hit on some of the myths and talked about a lot of the mindset issues. Are there any other common mistakes you see when it comes to pricing?
I think we've covered pretty much all of them, really. The main kind of mistakes, which is to think that I think the main one is really to think that you can't put up your prices, that it's just a really difficult thing to do, because you'll lose clients.
Right.
And yes, you might lose some clients, but actually if you're putting them up enough, and if you know you're going to do it, then actually it's the time, start marketing more heavily for more, for more income.
Right.
It's time to start looking around. I think that the confidence thing is a massive thing. Actually, you've just got to go in there and kind of go, do you know, I'm going to have this really uncomfortable conversation. And I still find some of the pricing conversations uncomfortable. It's not, you know, it doesn't go away, but the more you do them, the easier those conversations are. And the more you put your prices up and somebody buys it, you're like, oh,
yay.
Actually, yay. You know, I've got that was the equivalent of 2 or 1.5 or whatever it is. I didn't have to make nearly so much effort.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I definitely think, and I think just making sure you don't discount too heavily without good reason.
Right.
And again, definitely with the one-to-one type work and things like that, if they say they can't afford it, you don't go, well, here's 20% off.
Yes.
Yeah.
You go, well, here's my ebook, or here's my course, or here's my whatever it is that you've got, group program, or whatever it is that you've got. Here's my kind of, you know, my not one-to-one offering. Because I think otherwise people would go, well, I got that for $150 and I didn't even have to do anything.
Yes.
So it's kind of undermining, don't undermine the value of what you offer, I think. And I think it's very easy to go, I can't afford it. And you're like, oh, I really want that client, or I need that money. It's really easy to go, okay, I have a discount. But they're almost always the biggest paying clients, and you'll do more work for them than they.
So we just need to be brave and figure out our pricing.
Know your worth.
Some of that. But also, if you know your market as well, about, you know, kind of, and test it out and test until you get the right thing. And also, if you're doing a price and you're like, oh, that's a bit uncomfortable, so you go, you know, and then you go a bit too far, and then you're like, oh, I feel slightly sick now. That's the point at which you come back to so you should always be slightly uncomfortable with your pricing, because that means that you're not in your comfort zone. It's not got too easy. But also, if you feel too sick, you will not be able to sell at that price, because you will never be confident that you can sell.
Right.
So keep moving your pricing until you feel uncomfortable, but not like, oh my God, I could never do that.
Right.
And then come back to the slightly uncomfortable price.
Yeah. And so for us as writers, when we do it, I mean, like doing a course or a consultancy is a little bit different because you're talking bigger numbers. But like with our books, we also have the advantage that we don't have to have face-to-face conversations about this. We put the price up. If it sells, yay. If it doesn't, we can lower it. So it's like there's really
be brave. Even more reason to be brave.
Yes, exactly.
And also, you're also putting it up. You can also put it up by quite small increments as well, because actually the numbers are relatively small. So you don't, you know, you can put it up by $1. And although that's a big increase in percentage terms, actually it's not a very big increase in price.
Right.
You might go from $3.99 to $4.99, and actually people still buy exactly the same number of books as they did at $3.99.
Yes.
Right.
And sometimes different outlets might be more successful than others.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and also if you're in Kindle Unlimited, where, you know, readers can borrow books, and if like I have raised my prices. I mean, like I said, I was at $5.99 for about 6 months last year. But I found that I actually did make slightly more at $4.99. So I went back to $4.99. I just felt like a better, safer, or not
you've
safer.
You've tested it.
I tested it. But it really doesn't matter a whole lot if the majority of your readers are in Kindle Unlimited, and so they're going to borrow the book anyway. That gives you a little bit more freedom to test your prices, because the majority of your money is coming from KU and not from.
And is that a fixed price?
Yeah.
The KU subscription is.
No, for you, do you get a fixed price?
Yes, you get you get 70%.
Okay.
Oh, well, no, I'm sorry. The money you get from KU does vary per month, but that is out of our control. That's one of the issues.
But it's not like it's wildly different each month. You can kind of have a prediction.
Yeah. But I guess the advantage of that is because people have a subscription and they're essentially borrowing books for free.
Correct.
Then they might be more inclined to pick up a book from you where they kind of go, well, I'll have a try. Yeah. And then they might be more inclined to buy. So often sometimes buying into something, going into something that's slightly less profitable can be, certainly for authors, it might be a way to get you in front of more people and a wider audience.
Right.
And therefore then they will come off and buy.
Right.
If they're like, well, I want to read more, there's a limit to how many books I can have through this or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
That's
I
true.
know some authors do have a certain series in Kindle Unlimited just to pull people in. And then there's other people that they rotate their books kind of in or out, or they have certain books in and certain books out. So yeah, there's lots of.
So if you want to come and find out, if you want to read me endlessly, and people pick up and go, oh, I like this author, and then they'll read a whole series or a whole a whole set of books. So actually it can be quite a good way to kind of really pull people in, I think, although it's low cost. But I think it's kind of thinking about all the channels that you can kind of keep open, and you say, if it can provide a slightly steady background income, that's sometimes quite helpful as well, I think.
Yeah, it can be really good.
Right. Well, tell people where they can find you, more about you and your podcast and all of that. This has just been so fascinating. I've really, really, it's actually sparked some things for me, and I appreciate it.
So the podcast is called The Pricing Queen. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts. And I'm mostly on Instagram at The Pricing Queen. So that's probably the easiest place to find me.
Great.
All right. Terrific.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Well, we will have all those links in the show notes, and you can find them all at wishidknownthenpodcast.com. And thanks to Alexa Larberg for editing and producing the podcast. And we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. We hope this episode inspired you, empowered you, and made you laugh a little bit too. If you loved it, tell your friends about it. And if you feel so inclined, leave us a review. We look forward to being with you again next week.